Mark, obviously, with the upcoming season five of Temptation Island, what keeps you coming back to hosting the show?
Well, they didn't fire me, so that's one plus. But I love doing this show. I love the staff and crew that I work with. Like the vibe of what we're doing is really engaging and exciting to be a part of. And I also, well, if you'd asked me if I'd have picked this subject matter that I was going to be the host of, I don't know. But what I love is in the strangest places, I've been afforded the luxury and the ability to have real talk with real people on TV. And I know it sounds crazy and I've been talking about this to people a lot, that sometimes the thing you think you want doesn't show up in the same package you thought it would be in. So I said, I tell people the show looks like, late night Cinemax, but it feels like Oprah. So that's a plus for me. So getting to have like authentic talk, fly without a script, the support of my producers and these really, engaging and interesting people to talk to, I dig it. It's my thing.
I think it's one of my favorite things, especially whenever we see when right before the couples head off into this crazy world. And obviously there's some different elements brought to the table this year, but you have those personal conversations with each of these couples to kind of be like, hey, this is something you need to be aware of, or hey, these are the like having the conversations that maybe they're not having, right?
Well, I really like that I get to have a different perspective. I'm a little older. I've been married a long time. I have a different perspective on things, and so I find it interesting and reassuring that people come to the island, the couples come to the island, and they think the reasons they're coming are X, Y, and Z. And I smile with love and say, yeah, okay, but I think you're going to find answers, but it's not going to be those questions. The whole thing's going to shift when you kind of reconnect with who you are as an individual and figure out that, in fact, your complaint is not about the other person, because in relationship, it's never about the other person. And so to kind of help when they allowed for me to guide them a little bit, I don't know, that was never what I thought my role would be, but it's kind of turned into that a little bit. But I just like having this real talk with them and looking at, even when things are painful and really difficult and outrageous and hurtful, at least they're not alone in it. We can chat and kind of, chop it up together and get to the other end.
Absolutely. Obviously, with season five, we have our first ever engaged couple on the show. How do you think that changed the dynamic for not just the show, but for them?
Well, you know, people get so hung up, I think, not hung up, but the title of our relationship is really important. And so, fiance, this whole thing and the wedding and the marriage. And one of the things about this engaged couple that I think is relatable to so many couples is, especially young couples, is that timeline of what you want to accomplish in your life, like that chronological, I want to be this by then and that by this. And I, coming from a different place, I think it's all kind of bullshit. It's like, think life is going to happen to you regardless of your plan. So I was a little reticent to have an engaged couple, because if they're on their way to the altar and feeling good about it, I don't want to get in the way of that. But the fact is, they were engaged for a long time and they weren't on their way to the altar. And there were things in the way of them having a relationship. And I know that this might be a justification, but as crazy as the show is, and I'll say as a human being, I don't know that I would go on as a couple, but I'd much rather see an engaged couple work things out now and either have a happy marriage resolved and on the same page, or don't go there and involve things like children and other families, and find out several years from now that they're miserable. So, to me, engaged, dating, those are titles. You've committed to yourself. You've committed in a relationship at some level already. It just differences, jewels on your fingers or not.
All right, let's talk one of these new twists, the temptation light, which I think intrigued me because it's based on the couples knowing that someone did something without knowing until kind of a little bit later on who did that something. What did you think of that addition to the show?
When it was not pitched to me, but told me we were doing it, I was like, this is cheesy. I hate it. But then when it showed up, it plays right into what the entire Temptation Island experience is, including the video clips. And I tried to make this point to somebody the other day. The video clips aren't supposed to tell you what's going on the other side of the island. They're showing you out of context a clip of something that transpired on the other side of the island, and all it's there for is to elicit a response from you. Now, that response is good to watch on TV, but what really it is an answer to your question. If you felt this, then you know how you felt. And if you didn't feel anything, you know how you felt. So the Temptation Island light, which I at first was like, this is a gimmick we don't need, I actually love, because what happens is you're playing your single game, you're doing your thing, and the light comes on. And then the theater of the mind takes over, and there are answers for you there. There's answers like if the light goes on, you're like, whatever. Well, you're not in much of a relationship. But if the light comes on and you're sure, or you're sure it's your guy, then that's something too. That why are you assuming it's that guy? Right. So I like the idea that it doesn't tell you anything except that something's happening, and then your imagination runs wild. And that's sort of the torture of Temptation Island experience, but also where the answers are when we can boil that down. Right.
Yeah, it's you're right, because you on the surface level, it's like, man, it's a little bit gimmicky, but then like when you kind of dig deep, and even hearing you talk about it, it brings an extra layer that I didn't even think about heading into the season. You hosted the original version back in 2001. What's it been like seeing the evolution of reality TV since?
That's really a great question, because I did it, and it was like one of the first reality shows, and we did it the way we did it. And then I went on to do my career. I was doing all kinds of stuff, and then reality TV became an industry. So what was interesting to me is coming back to do the show again, but now everybody I'm working with are professionals at the top of the game of an industry that I was like, one of the founding fathers of, but then kind of took a break from. So it was interesting to me to come and try to do it the way that I do it, but with the help and support of the way that it has become, right? And so it was a shock for both of us. I'm like, wait a minute, all you want me to do is host? Like, I don't have to stage anything, and I don't have to walk to where you're going to handle that part? And on the other hand, they're like, wait, you're the host, and we don't have to write this. You're just going to riff, and like you're going to be with them, and you're going to remember our names and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's how we used to get down. That's how I get down anyway, right? And so I really loved it. And I laughed that I think that the reason I got the job in the first place was nostalgia, so that the reboot had some through line to the original. But then as soon as it aired, we realized that anybody watching the show, like few of them had seen the original. They were all too young. So I was just like a Bachelor ripoff dude. And I'm like, wait a minute, I was there first, yo. Come on.
Give me just a little bit of credit here. Come on, you know what I mean?
Google it, brother. Do something.
Yeah, it's crazy to think back at, like, when you think back about it, it was such a controversial show for its time. You know what I mean? Like, it was very risque. And then you watch the things that you see on TV now, or reality TV now. It's like, that was like nothing compared to kind of what we're seeing nowadays.
The original Temptation Island, which at the time was the highest rated show in the history of the Fox network in prime time, had 7 episodes. One of the couples, like when they were single, kissed someone else in episode 6. But it was 6 episodes before even a kiss happened. And that's another thing, is that, yeah, reality TV has changed, but people have changed, right? And sexuality has changed. And I think for the most part, for the better. Like, women are allowed to be sexual. We don't have to slut shame them, and men can be sensitive, and we can be things. And by the way, I'm kind of like in the middle of trying to write like I don't know if it's going to be essays or a book, but everybody maligns Gen Z and social media and all that stuff. And as a guy who's not that, I think this speaks to what we're talking about. There's so much I think Gen Z is giving us that's emotional intelligence and feels and health, like the difference between toxic relationship and health and non-judgment and freedom, all these things that I really am a student of, actually. So kind of went off on a tangent, but
no, I love that. I do love that.
The outtakes of Temptation Island, you'll see that I do that.
No, I love that, because you're right, because it is, we are in a day and age now where it's okay as a man to be emotional on national television. Like, these guys are these people are in real couples. Like, this is real couples putting their understanding, like, you have the line of, oh my God, like, am I going to leave here? I even think Hal said in the first episode, he's like, oh my God, there's a chance I'm going to leave here alone. And it's like, oh my God, you know what I mean? And it's like, you can be emotional without worrying about hundreds of thousands of people making fun of you.
And yet I still have to give permission sometimes, or they have to give each other permission sometimes.
Yep.
And what I love about, especially, and I hate to break these down gender wise, but from the men on the show, I found that there's this for some, a reticence to show emotion. But when that dam breaks, everybody wants them. And it's like, thank God we get to be real now. And so I try to, as best I can, um, kind of do what I can to be the conduit to that. Like, you got no judgment from me, and the raw and more open and vulnerable you want to be, I will go there with you 100%. Hold you if you need me to, because I'm a little mushy like that.
They say, like, I mean, I'm sitting here like, yeah, same. I get it. You know what I mean? I 100% get it. All right. So my final question to you is, obviously we can't divulge into the world of spoilers, but what can audiences expect from Temptation Island season 5?
The unexpected. There's some buzz phrases that we've been using. The Islanders always watching. What I'll tell you, like, some of the things that are different, there's some twists and turns that are great. The cast is outrageous and fun and gorgeous and all the stuff. But also, one of the things I like about this season is the singles up till this time in the last 4 seasons, they're part of the story, but it's really about the couples. But it dawns on us, and I've got to hand it to Trifari, our executive producer, and her team, that those singles and their love life matters as much as the couples. So they're empowered a little bit in that, and a little less gimmicky as far as vote offs and date selections and things like that. We're trying to just be more organic with everything, and take into consideration these singles' lives and their feelings. There are things that aren't even in the show where I drop in. I don't think they're in the show. I haven't seen it, but a couple of times when the couples are out on dates and the singles who aren't chosen are just in the house, I drop in and kind of have these bonfire moments with them, that I really valued. And I don't know if they made them on the air, but whatever. So yeah, I think the cast is engaging. I think the couples are great. The singles are great. The location is obviously amazing. And then the stories that go down and what they struggle with is both extreme but relatable to everybody.